With the world going into quarantine and countries stopping travel, a lot of the red light districts won't be able to operate the way they would. A lot of people won't be able to visit them. Today we're going to talk to Daniella from Operation Open Eyes more about this subject. So people would think, with red light districts not being able to operate they would, with people not being able to visit them like they would, that this is all good news. So is it all good news?
It is good news, but it's not all good news.
It's not all good news.
No. So it's good news in the sense that because of social distancing and isolation and countries going on lockdown, people aren't able to visit the red light districts and the strip clubs, and the in-person interaction is going down. Unfortunately, what's happening is the in-person is going down, but the online is rising. So the demand for sex trafficking online is rising.
So with everyone going into quarantine, it's not necessarily stopped the issue, it's just redirected it.
Correct, that's a great way to put it. And I think what you have to understand as well with trauma, so right now we're in a trauma with COVID-19, the whole world is in a trauma basically. Everyone's worlds are being shifted and disrupted, and so what happens is then trauma increases and anxiety increases and our anxiety triggers get pushed. So all our weaknesses, all the things that we gravitate towards for comfort get exaggerated. So what will be happening now is people will be desperate for that interaction with people, desperate for not feeling so disconnected, and they'll be looking for that online.
Okay, so if we separate these two parts, separate sort of the red light district area and then the online area. So going to the red light district area, people not able to visit it as much as they would, red light districts not able to operate like they would. And what obviously we know the positive side of that, but what's the negative side? What's the impact on maybe the girls that are working there, for example? What's the negative side of them not operating the way they could?
Yeah, I think when we look at this subject, it's easy to see things as black and white, and it's not always. So obviously we're all happy because we feel like the girls are not being sexually exploited, or the boys. But the flip side of that is you have hundreds and thousands of people in poverty. So human trafficking by definition is the exploitation of vulnerability. So what we haven't done is fix the vulnerability. So all those people who are no longer in work are still vulnerable. So they're still desperate for money, as a lot of us are. They're still needing to eat. They're still needing all the basic needs that we all do. And I know just as a Western nation, there's so many of us who are struggling financially right now that come from well-paid jobs. And a lot of these people don't have that history, that dependability, I suppose. So they are still desperate, which still makes them vulnerable to traffickers. The pressure for them to be exploited online to meet that financial need is greater.
So with them not being able to meet their financial needs the way they would, the people in the red light districts, where does that leave them? How can they get money? Can they get money? What does it look like for them on that front?
In countries such as Asia, where they don't have we in the West have a good government system. You know, the government's already talking about helping those who've been furloughed. In countries where they don't have such a good government support system, are completely relying on charities and people to get out there. So I know some anti-trafficking organisations are getting out and feeding the poor and the hurting and the homeless and the vulnerable, and trying to meet physical needs in a way prevention in that sense.
Will some of the girls in the red light districts, maybe, I don't know if you know the answer to this, but would they be then moved onto an online platform? because they can't do it in a red light district physically with people, are they also then utilising those girls into the online scene?
Yes, because you have to remember as well, all those bar owners are wanting income, right? That they're also in a similar position of the girls working provided their income, and so if the girls aren't working, they're not making money. So the pressure is also on them to find creative ways to utilise the girls in their bars.
Mm-hmm. So that's the red light district situation. So then the flip side is then moving online.
Yeah.
And so what are the consequences of a lockdown? What's the impact of the online scene in this situation?
So as far as the girls, or as far as the demand? Girls, boys, the exploited or the demand?
Yes.
Okay. So we kind of touched on it a bit earlier as far as the demand side, with the trauma the world globally is in, and you will naturally get an increase, unfortunately, of child abuse. What happens, you're shut in the home, and our anxiety and our anger rises. We have nowhere to take our frustration, and often that gets put on children. So the increase of child abuse, child sexual abuse, domestic abuse rises in this time, we've
seen that in the news recently, people talking about the thousands and thousands of people that have been involved with domestic abuse as a result of being stuck inside.
Right, because remember, you're stuck inside with your perpetrator, right? You have no way of escape, whereas before you might have had some escape. There's a whole group of people who have no escape, and suicide rates also rise and will continue to rise even after this is over, as we struggle to find our normal. And because of that, porn addictions are going to rise, people logging in are going to rise, and Fight the New Drug and Triple X Church are great at resources on the effects of porn use.
We can see if we can find the link.
Yeah.
And we can put those in the description box below.
Yes. But they are also good avenues for people who are looking for comfort in this way and are not wanting to, and are wanting to seek restoration and help. The other side of that is with online porn, it's even harder to build that social connection, right? When we interact with people, we're usually reading their body language, their voice, everything. Online, there's a separation. We can't meet that emotional connection. And it's even harder for us to understand what's happening on the other side. So pornography as such is a very glamorous thing to look at. It's crude and it's all of that. But you're entering into a fantasy and you're seeing what you want to see anyway, right?
It's removed from the streets.
Yeah.
So you don't see the darkness of walking around on the street. All you see is the setup on a camera.
Right. You're buying.
So it looks
into
more
the
glamorous
fantasy.
in that.
Right. Which then tells our brain that what we're doing is fine. We're not engaging in exploitation. We're not raping anybody. We're not buying anybody. There's a certain disconnect of responsibility. But what we don't see is how those people get to that place. We don't see what's happening behind the camera, and it's dangerous. It's very dangerous.
So so we've looked at the two different parts. So people watching, they might say, okay, so how can we help combat the online side, more focusing on there? People know that you go to red light districts in various countries and you're very hands-on in that area, not able to do that right now. So what then can people do to help either support you or other people that are having to combat this now online more than in person? Yeah,
so always for me, prevention over cure is key. So I would say focus on your own house. Are you staying emotionally and mentally healthy? What can you do to make sure you're utilising healthy ways to deal with this trauma? And also still keep listening out on the streets, because while we're self-isolating and self-distancing, the people who are not going to be are probably not the ones that are probably the ones that need to more. So, you know, still looking at listening on your street for people coming and going late at night, things like that. Making sure you have, I think it's Covenant Eyes has a great online accountability program. Again,
We'll try and find a link and put that in the box below.
Protect your kids, protect yourselves, protect your husbands, your wives, just from that temptation to go on, and use this time to really build your family and your relational connections.
So, thank you.
Thank you.
If you've, I don't know that enjoyed this video is necessarily the right term, but if this has been helpful, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell, and until next time, we'll catch you later.